Hi everyone, welcome to Suresh Techs. If you are visiting our channel for the first time or if you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do subscribe Suresh Techs. So in our previous tutorial we looked at margins, padding and then borders, and in this tutorial we will look at HTML tables. So tables are very important concept in HTML. So how do you create a table? Just like any other element, if you want to create a table you need to use an element called table. Okay, now I'll try to create a project. So I'm going to have an HTML followed by HTML close. I'll have a body and then I'm going to close the body. Sorry, this is I have to close the body, right? Okay, fine. So let me keep tables. Okay, I'm going to save this as tables.html. Saved it. Okay, now if I open this project in Chrome, so there should be a header saying tables, right? Google Chrome. That's great. So now let me create a table. So to create a table, the element what we have to use is table, right? We have to use an element called table and you need to close it. Now whenever you talk about a table, so it's a collection of rows and columns. So how do you create a row? So to create a row you need to use an element called tr. Tr stands for table row. So we are creating a row. So let me create a row here and I'm going to close this. So if I refresh it now, let's look. Okay, nothing is happening because we have a row but there is no data inside it, right? We have a row but there is no data inside it. So now to provide a data inside a row, so there is some other element called td which stands for table data. So that means we are keeping data inside a row. Now let me say Suresh and let's check what is going to happen. See, Suresh is, so it is displaying Suresh. Now let me provide some other data inside this row. Okay, I'm trying to keep, so I have kept four table data here. Okay, so inside a row, so I have a single row, inside that I have four table datas. Now if I refresh it, so this is how it looks like now. So this is one row, so you have created one row. So now let me create another row. Okay, to create another row you have to create another table row. Inside that you can place the elements. For example, you just keep the same elements, or let me keep some other data. Let's say Naresh. Okay, I'm going to close this. I know in the top here I forgot to close, but still HTML is trying to cover it by itself, so it is not so browser doesn't throw any error, but it's always a best practice to close a element. Now let me close this. Okay, so I'll say okay. Now let me refresh it. See, so this is how it looks like, right? So we have created two rows here. So to create a row you have to use an element called tr. R stands for table row, and similarly to create data inside a row you have to use an element called td. Now you are trying, now you are successfully able to create a table, but basically a table should have the borders, right? This is not looking, so this is not looking like a table. So if I provide some border to that, it looks like a table. So now what I'll do, as we know, so there is a CSS property, as we know there is a CSS property to provide a border, right? So I'll use style on the table and I'll try to give a border. I'll give 2 pixels followed by solid, and then I'll give blue color. Let's try with the blue color. Anything is fine, but see, so this is how it looks like. So we have a border, so we have a border for the table but we don't have a border for the row. So let me just copy paste the same thing here. Okay, so we have a border for that row and I'm going to keep a border for the second row. Okay, what happened? Style and then border. Okay, so I have provided border for a table row, but let me try to give it for a table data also, and let's check whether it is going to apply or not. Okay, let me give it to the table data. Okay, let's try it now. Awesome. So if you look at here, so we have applied a border for a table row, and then we applied a border for table data. So instead of adding this style everywhere, we can use CSS internal style setting, right, which we had already seen. So I am going to specify head, and I'm going to close the head. Inside that I'm going to add a style element. So this is how we use internal style setting, right? Now I will try to specify table, and for the table row, and for the table data. Okay, for all of these three I want to use border 2 pixels. Okay, and then solid, I'll say blue. Okay, so this is how it looks like. So now since I have specified there, so there is no use of all the styles here, so I am going to remove all the inline styles. Right now it is going to apply everywhere. Now it is going to apply everywhere in our table row, table data, and table. Right now even we don't need this. Okay, this is inline style setting. I am removing it because I have an internal style setting now. If I refresh it now, so look at this. So this is how the table rows and columns are going to be created. Now if you don't want all the border, if you don't want the borders to be created for all the different table datas, so here that here the here the border is applying to all the table datas. So in case if you want to collapse the table, if you want to collapse, now in case if you want to collapse the borders, so you should use something called border collapse. So there is a property called border collapse. If you say border collapse to collapse, look at this. So this is how it looks like. So the border is going to collapse here, so that you will get a feeling of a table here. So that's how collapsed borders are going to work. Now if you look at this, okay, now if you look at this, there is no padding. So let me try to provide some padding here. Okay, so I'm going to provide 20 pixels. Okay, so this is going to be applied to the table row, and the table data. Okay, now look at here. Okay, so it is applying 20 pixels, applying to everywhere. So this is a beautiful table. Now let me create another table with meaningful data. Okay, so let me keep it like this. I am going to create a new table. I'll have a table, and I'm going to close the table. So I'm going to close the table. Now I will try to keep row. So my first row, this is my first row, and this is my second row, and I am going to keep one more row. So in my first row I want the headings. Now to keep the headings, okay, so there is one more element called th. Th stands for table heading. So the table heading will provide the text to be little bold. So the table header will make the text or the heading to be little bold. So that's the use of table header. Okay, so table heading. So if you specify name, okay, and you are going to close this, so this is one heading, and similarly you can keep another heading for your column. For example, you could say address, name, address, and then you could say phone number. Okay, so I have specified 3 headers here in the first row of the table. Now in the second row of the table I will try to provide the data. So to provide a data, so now in the second row I will try to provide a table data. So to provide a table data you have to use td. So now what I will do, I will give Suresh because that is the name, and the second data I need address. Okay, so I am going to give, this is my address, something like that I can give. I'm going to close this table data. Now similarly I can give the phone number. Okay, I can give table data. Now I have a third row even here. I haven't specified anything. Let me try to paste the same thing. So this is my third row. So the third row has three datas. One is Suresh. For this I'll change it to Naresh. Now if I refresh this, look at this. So this is how it looks like. This is how it looks like. Just look at here. So you have a name, you have an address, and then you have a phone number. Now for this table header we haven't specified the styling. Okay, let me keep the table header also so that it looks beautiful, right? So this is how it looks like. So if you want to provide some break in between these two tables, so this table got end here, so now you can provide some breaks here so that there will be a space between these two. Okay, so where did I provided that space? Sorry, I have to provide before the table, right? That's great. Now if you look at this, so there is, okay, there should be, okay, so I'm providing here, sorry, so I have the closing of the first table here. Okay, this is here. Now if you look at this, there should be a space between two tables, and this is how you specify the table headers. Now there are cases. Now this is how you provide the padding. Now if you want these, so now if you want the titles or the data to be aligned in the left side, okay, so you could specify something. You could use the property of CSS. You could use the CSS property called text align. So when you say text align to be left, so by default it would be centered, but if you want it to be left, you could specify left so that the headers will move to left side. So that's the use of text alignment. Okay, now for example, if you want to provide a space between the borders, so now if you look at this, so this is one border and this is one border. So now if you want to specify space between the border, so there is some other property called border spacing. So when you say border spacing, let's give 10 pixels. Okay, I'm just saving this, I'm not refreshing it. You just look at this and let me refresh this. Okay, so we are not able to identify it, right? We are not able to identify it, but it's been applied. Okay, so that's how you provide a border spacing. Now this is one cell, cell 2 and cell 3. Now if you want to make a cell span to more than one column, for example, instead of these two columns, address and phone numbers, you want to keep a single column. Okay, so you have two columns here, but instead of that you want, instead if you want two columns to be in a single column, right? If you want to make a cell span to more than one column, so if you want to make a cell span more than one column, then you should use a property called column span. So where you need to specify that wherever you need to span. For example, let me span this address and phone number to a single column. For that what should I do? So here I have table headers, address and phone number. So now I don't want this phone number, instead I want to span this. So if you look at here, now if I save this and refresh it, so this is how it looks like. But instead if you want this address to span to the third column too, so you should specify an attribute called column span. So in the column span you have to specify the number of columns it has to span. So in this case it has to span one more column, so that means total 2. Okay, that means total 2. Now if you refresh it, look at this, so it spanned to 2 columns. For example, if you say 3, okay, and if you refresh it, see here, so it will not move because we don't have more than 3 datas, right? So if you specify another data here, okay, let me specify some other data. Now if you look at here, now it will display because we have data here, that's why it is going to span to the third column. So third column, and if you don't have data, it's not going to be spanned. So this is how it looks like. So similarly, so just like column span, you could do a row span. So now similarly you can do a row span. So you look at here, so look at here, so here Suresh and Naresh is there. So if you want these two rows to be span to a single row. Okay, and then what you can do, so here under Suresh and Naresh, so where do we have, so here we have Suresh and here we do have Naresh. So what you can do here is, so you can span, let me give it here. Okay, so this is Suresh. Okay, so what I will do, I will use row span of 2. So when I say row span of 2, here I don't need this because the first row, because the first data in your first row is going to span in the second row too. Okay, so that's why if I refresh it here, so this is how it looks like. So here we are doing row span, and in the top we are doing the column span. So that's how you have to work with the tables. Okay, so this is all working fine. Now if you want to provide a caption to your table, so how do you do that? So there is another element called caption, and there is another element called caption, and that you need to specify just below the table element. So here you have to specify caption followed by the naming. So for example, Suresh table, and you have to close this, and just remember, and please remember, it has to be just below the table element. Okay, now if you refresh it, okay, so this is how it looks like. So it will be the caption for this table. Okay, so these are the different options available for us to work with the table. So how do you do that? So to create a table, you have an element called table, and to create a row you have an element called tr stands for table row, and to create a data you have an element called td, which stands for table data, and to create a header you have an element called th. So th stands for table header, and to create the row span and column span you have two attributes such as column span and row span. Okay, let me go back to the presentation now. So this is our table, and to create a row you use table row, and to create the data you will use table data, and to create a table header you will use th. Okay, so this is how you will create the border, and these are the collapsed borders. Okay, so by default, if you don't specify this, each row, each data, okay, each table data is going to have a separate border, will have a separate border. But if you don't want that, you could use border collapse. Okay, so this is how you provide cell padding, and this is to align your headings to the left side. Okay, and this is how you specify spacing to your border. We looked at this, but there is no result, but we are not able to view it properly, but this is how it works. And similarly we looked at row spanning, so similarly we looked at row span and the column spanning, and finally we looked at the caption. That's it for today. Please do subscribe to Suresh Techs. Thank you so much.